Today's project is going to be for the kitchen. My wife and I both enjoy homemade bread, and though we no longer make bread the classic way, which is using your hands and kneading the dough and all that, we do have a semi-automatic bread machine. And I call it semi-automatic because you still have to put all the ingredients in there. But we do enjoy homemade bread, and as a result we're able to adjust the recipes so we can reduce the fat and we can reduce the salt and make a healthier bread than the stuff you buy in the store. That being said, when we have the loaf out of the machine, then sometimes it gets a little hard to start slicing it. We have this bread slicing guide, and it works all right. There's one small problem though, and that is my longest bread knife is just long enough to go all the way through. However, when I pull the knife back to cut, then it's not. And as a result, what ends up happening is you do this as you're cutting. And it's a rather annoyance. And in all honesty, this whole thing does not need to be this large in length or width, because my loaf only goes that far. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new base for this. I was thinking about busting this one apart and making it smaller, but I think I'm just going to go large and make a new base for it. And the new base is going to fit the bread a little bit better. So that's what we're going to do. The loaf size of my bread maker is 5 1/4 inches square if you look from the top down. This form is 6 3/8 inches. It's not going to save a lot of distance, but it might make it a little easier to cut the bread. So now I choose some wood. All right, so the outside shell is almost done. I made a mistake. I didn't think far enough ahead. I could have gone a groove all the way around, but I didn't. So I have a little bit of a triangle space right there that's showing. So what I'm gonna do is I cut these offcuts when I made the bevels, and I'm just going to glue them into place. And then once the glue dries, I'm going to sand them. So the box is complete. I'm going to leave the tape on the sides until tomorrow when I go ahead and do the finish work. And now I'm going to do the lid. Now the lid on the original is this. And what they did was they did a bunch of slats and glued it together to make room for dust to drop. And what I'm going to do is something similar, but not exactly, and that is I am going to cut grooves in one side and then opposing tangent on the other side, and then that will create this same effect only on a single piece of wood. So I've got everything set up and I'm getting ready to go. Well, I think this box is coming out rather nice. I've got to do some sanding still. And we've all seen sanding happen, so I don't know if you want to see me do it again. So I'll do that off of camera. But I want to show you something really quick. I made a mistake. And it's fixable. It's rather embarrassing, and you know, we here at 10 Fingers Woodworking try to hide our mistakes as much as possible, but when we don't, then we show them. So this is the lid. Now let me refresh your memory. This is the originals, and it's got these slats, and the bread sits here, and then the bread crumbs are able to fall down into the cavity. And what they did was they just made a bunch of slats and then glued horizontal pieces. And what I did was I took one piece of wood and I cut dados and then opposing dados, right? So here's the problem. I made a mistake and I made this a cutout. So now when I set it in here, it's too low. Now you would say, oh, why don't you just put it upside down? And it's just right. Well, the problem is now the horizontals will be here, and you really kind of want them here. So there's a fix to this, and that is to sand this down or cut off the excess to be flush. There's plenty of room in here for breadcrumbs. This does not need to be this thick. So that's what I'm going to do. And then I'll also sand down the outside, make it look nice and pretty. And we'll see you back in a little bit. Okay, this is all sanded down, nice and smooth to 220. And the lid fits beautifully. Nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some mineral oil as a finish. The mineral oil is food safe. As a matter of fact, it is edible. I mean, it's a laxative, but it's better than something like tongue oil. And since this is going to touch food, I prefer it to be something that is truly food safe. So mineral oil, it applies just like other oil finishes. So what we're going to do is we're going to flood the surface and then wipe off the excess. So just like that, just kind of flood that surface. Look at that. Now, this is because it's a food safe doesn't mean you don't have to follow the standard precautions of oil finishes. You still want to put your rags in a fire safe so that they don't spontaneously combust. But I think this will be beautiful for this project. I'm having a hard time getting it into corners here, but that's just load up your rag a little extra, and this wood is rather dry, so it's soaking it up really good. So I might do an immediate second coat.
So that's the box. Now, handle it.
It always amazes me. You know, you're working on a project and it's kind of bland and not particularly beautiful. And then you put finish on it, and everything changes. What also amazes me is I'm wearing a glove on my right hand and not one on my left hand, and it's not that big of a deal, but why am I on the hand that I'm touching the rag with? I don't have a glove, so. Like I say, I'm going to just go ahead and put a second coat immediately. Because it soaked it all up, which is fine. And finally, second coat on the lid. Now you want to kind of inspect your work, because any oil left behind when you wipe off, if you don't wipe off, will become a sticky mess. So I'm just going over and with a dry part of this rag, making sure I get all the wet spots. I'm going to let this sit overnight, and then tomorrow I am going to put the guide on, attach the guide. Now, this part of the guide, I'm going to have to resize so that it fits my new unit, because this is so much wider, which is the reason why we did this whole thing in the first place. So I'm going to have to resize this. So I'll be pulling this off of the old unit, and then I'll cut this down the size after it's installed. So, and that's for tomorrow. So I'm done for today, and I hope you all have a great evening. All right, off camera, I have installed the guides. Just marked where the screws needed to go, and then I had to cut down this end piece. And I think this project is done. Let's see how well it works. In my original video, I showed how the knife was too short for the original guide. So you can see here now, the knife is plenty long for this one. Now let's see how it cuts bread. So here's the remnants of a previous loaf. It fits in here perfectly. And beauty. Much better. What do you think, love?
Yep, good.
Good. Finally, after every woodworking project, you should always count your fingers. You end with 10. Good job.
Hey, share some of that fresh baked bread with me, would you?